politics from the left side of things. Okay, I know y'all saw the press conference, and I know y'all are a little bit disappointed, but let's talk about it, right? USA Today reports the White House summary of President Joe Biden's proposed framework for the $1.7 trillion package of social programs doesn't include his proposal to provide 12 weeks of paid family leave, which disappointed some House Democrats and some Indiana Democrats, including myself. The head of the House Appropriations Committee, Representative Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut, said members of Congress get paid time off when they're sick, but that many Americans do not. It's unfortunate that will not be the case for American people. Biden's initial proposal called for $225 billion for national programs to provide paid family medical leave for workers for 3 months after having a child, rehabilitation from an illness, caring for a disabled relative, or dealing with a partner's military deployment. That proposal called for up to $4,000 per month in paid leave for individuals who participate, with a minimum of 2/3 of average weekly wages and increasing to 80% for the lowest wage workers. The United States is just one of 6 countries with no national paid leave program. This is disturbing because we find ourselves in a situation where people have to choose between, taking care of their health or going to work sick. And we know during this COVID crisis, there were a lot of people who were taking their COVID-ridden behinds to work when they should have stayed home, infecting other people, especially a lot of people that don't want to get vaccines. This is a problem because if people can't stay home and take care of themselves when they are ill, they run the risk of getting a lot of other people sick, or if they find themselves in an accident where they need several weeks of rehabilitation, they have no income coming in, which would then keep a roof over their head that would allow them to take care of their children the way they want, able to feed themselves, and buy the medication they need to get better. It's unfortunate that we had multiple Democrats and every Republican not want something that gives back to the community when they're sick. We're not talking about people, the folks that the Republicans always want to complain about, the ones that aren't working. We're talking about people who work and then have a baby, because we know how much, Republicans are pro-birth. Just have your baby and get your behind back to work, basically. And we also know how much they call themselves family values. But if somebody in your family is sick and you need to take care of them, shame on you. You better find another way. Or just go into the poorhouse. See, I don't like the idea of having to parse out and do one or the other. We should be able to help people sustain their lives while they're in an unforeseen circumstance, and still spend more money on the military budget than the next 25 countries combined. I'm certain there's a way for us to reallocate some of those funds to give back to the American people. It's frustrating to me that I'm fortunate. I have sick days. I have good insurance. I have an employer who literally during COVID didn't even make you use your sick time if you contracted COVID-19. Everybody's not that lucky. And it's unfortunate that as a nation, we can't find it in our hearts to figure out a way to take care of people when they most need it, when they're sick or when their loved one is sick. Y'all, we got work to do. We've got to do better than this. How can we say we're a Christian nation or a nation with values when we can't even take care of our people when we're sick? And I know that it was a compromise because we got to get the infrastructure bill passed, but some things shouldn't be compromised on. Or if the compromise has to be made, it didn't have to be cut all the way out. There was a way we could have done something. And those people who didn't want this one thing, I got issue with. So we got to do better about who we're sending to Congress. We got to do better about who we're sending to the Senate. Because if we're sending people to Congress and the Senate that don't actually give a dang about the American people, then what are they there for? I'm really kind of sick and tired of sending people to Congress who want to see government fail and not do what it's supposed to do and be a backup or a stopgap for families that need it. All right? You know me. Let me get back inside the borders. I got to go talk about that Indiana GOP because they're so special. Republican state legislators in Indiana are talking about changing the law to make school board elections in Indiana partisan, with candidates running with a party label after their name. Indiana, like most states, now has nonpartisan elections. In August, Representative Bob Morris of Fort Wayne, no less, said he's planning to introduce a bill in the next session of the Indiana General Assembly that would have school board candidates appearing on ballots in the state along with their party affiliation. He says, parents call me. How can I protest? How can I make sure my voice is heard that I don't agree with these school boards are doing? He said, the decision is made at the ballot box. When they vote for that person, and if they're not sure what party they affiliate themselves with, very important to make sure this happens. And of course, the genius of the Indiana General Assembly, and I say that sarcastically as I possibly can, Representative Jim Lucas said he also supports making school board elections partisan, though he rejects the use of the word partisan in this context, saying it's about giving voters better information about candidates. The schools are being politicized now, he says. Let's rip off the mask and let people know where potential school board members stand. This is the same this is the same person who had a stocking on his head protesting mask mandates. We should listen to this guy? This guy is the voice of wisdom of what school boards should be looking like? School boards, the people that decide the education. We should take advice from the guy that had a stocking cap on his head. See, I actually don't have an issue with people acknowledging their party affiliation if they choose to, because they can always run as an independent, right? But what I do take issue with is what the end goal of what they think they're doing. What they think they're doing is fooling people into saying, oh, we know there's no school board in the state of Indiana, or the majority of school boards and the people who vote for school board members are not going to vote for Democrats. Because we don't want to teach kids the true history of America. We don't want kids to feel bad. We're not going to give them all the tools that they need to be, prosperous and competitive in this world. We want to dumb it down. But ultimately, the goal is, and y'all need to understand this, and I don't even know if I can say it any clearer. The whole goal ultimately is to defund public education. They want to treat public education like they're doing the government. They don't like government, so they're trying to shut it down. They don't want to have public education. They want to shut it down. But because our Constitution basically states that it's the state's responsibility to fund public education, that means your tax dollars are going to go into that system anyway. So let me go ahead on and siphon out as much as I can and give it to my homies who got their private schools, who have online schools, and all these for-profit schools. We're still trying to get our money back from the online debacle that happened where they stole millions of Indiana taxpayer dollars for scams. But this is what it's all about. Because, see, the school board gets to determine how to allocate their dollars. And if they can control the school board, then trust me, little Johnny is not going to get the education he deserves. Tyler Keita had his, parents' Bill of Rights that he wanted to introduce. But I always want to know, when he says parents can complain and parents have a say, which parents he talking about? Is he talking about all parents? Is he talking about the melanated parents? I want to know. And by the way, Abdul, you know who you are. You went into your press conference the other day and he kicked you out. I'm going to tell you what, you black Republicans are going to learn one of these days. Y'all going to learn one of these days. Y'all not there to have a voice. Y'all there to just be tokenized. Tyra Keita kicked Abdul out. Now, mind you, Abdul been doing what he do for years. He's definitely media. But Tyra Keita said, nah, get out. Black Republicans, y'all so special. Oh, well, y'all gonna learn today. But you know what? This is why I'm excited about we are now turning the corner. And people are out here declaring their candidacy for office all over the state and at every level. And right here on Turn Left, we're gonna bring you those candidates, and we're gonna start tonight. I'm excited. So I got a question for all you folks out there. Have you heard anything from Trey Hollingsworth? Have you seen Tennessee Trey? Do you know where he is? Do you know where he stands? Has he made a statement? Has he done anything with the $1 million he got? He purchased District 9, and what is he doing for District 9? Has he proposed any legislation? He hasn't. At least I haven't seen anything. I don't live in District 9, but it ain't like we got 12 congressmen. We ain't got but 9. They easy to follow. They real easy to follow. But I ain't seen nothing from Tennessee Trey. And now tonight, we have the first candidate, one of the first candidates who has declared himself a candidate for District 9, Congressional District 9. Y'all welcome to the show, Matt Fyfe. Matt, welcome to the show.
Woo, thanks for having me, Dana. It is really exciting, and I'm pretty fired up after listening to you. That was a nice little intro.
Well, thank you. I need you to be fired up because you got some work to do if you're going to take down Tennessee Trey, the carpetbagger. So, Trey, Matt, I met you once or twice, I think a couple of times. I know I met you at French Lick. Tell the people who you are and where you come from.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Matt Fyfe. I'm running for United States House of Representatives down in District 9. Maps have recently changed, so District 9 looks a little bit like it used to about 15 years ago when Barron Hill was in office.
Yep.
So there's some excitement around the maps changing there. And I'm a high school teacher. I'm a father of 3, and I'm a leader in my labor union. Those are kind of the 3 qualities that I think are most important to me as I run for office. They really push a lot of the issues that I think I'm gonna talk about as a candidate.
I love it. I love it. So, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Decatur, Indiana. It's a small town up near Fort Wayne. So
I know, yeah, I know where it is.
Yep, Fort Wayne that you mentioned a little bit ago. Small town. My dad was a railroad engineer for 45 years, leader in his union as well. My mom was had some various jobs in schools like bus driver, ENLA, that kind of stuff. And so pretty normal small town beginnings, Belmont High School. Wanted to be a teacher. Let's see, I had an 8th grade math teacher. And I'm a math teacher nowadays. I'm at the high school level.
That's what's up.
But an 8th grade math teacher, Mr. Grog, it'd be fun if he were listening to this or something. But he really inspired me to want to be a teacher myself. He was always involved, and he was one of those people who, by the time I had him, he was probably 60 years old or so. He was getting older, but he had more energy than every middle schooler combined. You know, one of those teachers. And he was involved in the basketball team. He was involved in keeping scorebook for the high school basketball team. He drove a bus. He had a CDL license. So he went on all the field trips with the kids. And one thing I just remember really loving about him is not only was he teaching me in the classroom, but he just cared about me outside the classroom. You know, he cared about the other students. And on the basketball team, I remember him routinely just keeping kids after practice, making sure their grades were up, making sure they were doing good in school. I remember him on the bus trips. We'd get off the bus or we'd stop for food somewhere, and he'd say, "Hey, we're going to leave this place better than we found it. It's going to be cleaner than we found it after we left it. We're going to get off this bus. We're going to make sure that, you know, that all our trash is picked up and it looks nicer than how we found it." And I remember kids pushing, you know, middle school kids. I remember them pushing back sometimes, be like, "There's gum on the bottom of this seat. How are we going to do that?" And he'd just look at them and say, "Somebody's got to get it. Why not us? We can wash our hands afterwards." And it was simple statements like that that just pushed us to be better people. And I saw the impact teachers could have pretty early on in my life. And I thought, what a great thing that could be. So that's kind of my beginnings, you know, small town, wanting to be a teacher.
Where'd you go to school to get your education?
Yeah, I went to Goshen College, so also here in Indiana.
I got one of my fans went to Goshen.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of my best friends went to Goshen, so I know all about it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, great place. It was actually smaller than my high school, so it was a very intimate feel
Mm-hmm.
in college. It was a nice, it was a great place to learn and learn to be a teacher and all that. The and then I actually also have a public policy degree, a master's degree from Vanderbilt University.
Nice.
So right after college, I went. My wife is an academic, and she was getting a doctorate down in Vanderbilt. And I'm a teacher. I can be a teacher anywhere, right? There's schools everywhere. So we went down to Nashville, Tennessee, and I taught there for 3 years. And I knew we had 2 years left. Um, and I thought, man, Vanderbilt University, Peabody College at the time was rated as the number one education school in the world. And I thought, I got 2 years here. Let's see if I could make it. Like, could I
Mm-hmm.
make it into the school? Can I even apply and get accepted? And I was accepted, and it was a really cool opportunity to learn a little bit about public policy, education policy, again, from a really great school. And so that's kind of my degrees. Those are my education experiences.
That's pretty cool. So what you came back? I mean, I know one of the things that we struggle with here in Indiana is that we have a tremendous brain drain. Why'd you come back home?
Yeah, so my wife and I are both from up near or Indicator, Indiana.
Okay.
And we always knew we wanted to be as close to family and as close to home as possible. We love it here. Hoosier State is great. And for her, she works at IU now, so Indiana University, and it's one of the best psychology programs that is around. And so it's like her dream job. It's about as close as we can get back to home to family, and she gets to work with great colleagues, great university. And again, so I kind of got that degree, that public policy degree, and I pretty quickly learned that I miss teaching.
Yeah.
As weird as that is, I kind of thought like, oh, this degree is gonna take me into the policy world, or I'm gonna kind of connect with something else. And I quickly learned that I just miss the students.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
and so again, schools are everywhere. So it was a pretty easy decision once we were back here to teach again while she's working at IU.
Okay. And so, you missed teaching. What was it that you missed about teaching? Was it, what got you up in the morning?
Yeah, good question. So teaching is just a fulfilling job.
Mm-hmm.
The kids are different every day. The kids are different every year, and they really bring a lot of passion and energy. Sometimes I feel like when I'm down about the world, when I'm kind of thinking about it, could be politics, it could be school boards becoming partisan,
Mm-hmm.
it could be climate change, it could be things outside of politics. But sometimes when I'm kind of down, I think teaching is actually that thing that kind of lifts me back up. I get to be around those students, and they have such passion, they have such idealism, such energy for the world, and
Yeah.
I just know that the future is going to be a better place when I'm with them.
I love it. And that's what's needed, right? The commitment to the
Yeah,
kids.
it is. And not only, I mean, I'm trying to do my best, right? I'm trying to feed them an education to where they want to go out in the world and they want to make a better place. I'm trying to create some sort of education that they're getting, that they go out and they're a really productive member of society, and they can
Mm-hmm.
help others once they leave. But at the same time, I think they're helping me just as much. They're showing me that there is going to be that energy in the world and that passion. And so that's part of it. I mean, I just don't think that there's a better job in the world for getting that sort of
Yeah.
passion and energy going. Um,
And then when you
and secondly,
see,
I just
yeah, and
it's a oh, go ahead.
I was like, and when you see like the nonsense that we're seeing with some parents who they've been ginned up. Let's just be clear. They've been ginned up by the latest version of the racialized boogeyman, because there's always a racialized boogeyman when it comes to suburban America. You find one and they show up. We see the black and white pictures of what happened during school desegregation or school busing, the color pictures in the 1970s. All we got to do is racialize the next boogeyman, CRT. And now you
Mm-hmm.
have these parents who are literally behaving in such a way that unions have reached out to the Justice Department and said, could you help us out here? What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on what you're seeing and some of the behavior and some of the causes that are contributing to this behavior?
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of connects to how you're saying of making these school boards partisan. Education shouldn't be divisive, in my mind, and a lot of times, I mean, it seems like such a simple statement, but I don't know why it would be. We're literally taking care of the next generation of of kids who are going to grow up and help our world be a better place.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be divisive. And I think by pushing that agenda, kind of like you're saying, this scaring people by saying these words like CRT, scaring people by saying things are going to change, or, I listened to Dr. Jennifer McCormick recently, and she told this story about how parents would come to her and say, I know that they're teaching pornography to our kindergartners. That doesn't even make sense. Like, where are you getting this kind of stuff? And similarly, I've been on the campaign trail a little bit, and I'm kind of out in the community. And being a teacher, one of the first questions I get sometimes is like, so what do you think about CRT? And oftentimes my response to these people, because as an educator, I also just want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important that we do start talking about these issues, but I want to make sure that we kind of have the shared definition first. And so a lot of times I say, well, this is, I've heard CRT defined this way, or this other way. So I want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. Can you kind of explain what you think CRT is?
Right.
And I'd say at least half the time people go, I don't know.
Exactly.
They know they're scared of it, right? They know they don't like it. They know it's happening in our schools and it's bad for children, but they don't have a definition for it to begin with. And it's exactly like you said, it's a boogeyman.
It's terrible.
And it is, and it really takes away from just making sure that we're there for our kids in our schools. And schools are doing so much for our kids, but also our neighborhoods, the football games, the after-school programs. We need to make sure we're there supporting everybody. And that's just not happening when we're creating these boogeymans.
Absolutely. And it drives me nuts, because then what happens is when you have really good school board members on the board, they may not have, they're not getting paid, so they sure as heck don't want to get harassed like that. And so now they're stepping down and they're resigning. And so having alternate voices on the school board isn't going to happen, because they're literally getting threats and being harassed. And it's unfortunate. And now as teachers, you guys aren't having the same issues that the school board members are you? I know you teach math, so surely they don't think there's some CRT in math.
I mean, I've definitely there's some letters floating around. I'll say it this way. There's some letters floating around saying, I prefer you not teach my child. And then it lists kind of 18 things. And I've definitely gotten a few of those letters. Now, the thing is, I think it might depend on what school you're at. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to kind of bring this back to partisan school boards for a second. I've worked for different principals in my life, and I got to say, it really depends sometimes the administration you work for, whether they're going to stand up for the teachers and the curriculum they're teaching, where they're going to stand up and say, hey, this is what's best for students. And we know it. And we know it because we're trained professionals, because our teachers are trained professionals. There are principals in their administration who will do that. And sometimes there are principals in administration who they'll bend over to the parents a little bit, the loudest group. And we'll say, okay, let's try to change things for those parents. And I think one thing that scares me about having partisan school boards is that then you're going to start having hires that are, maybe not best for kids, but are best for that party.
Yes.
That is,
yes.
I got an uncle who's got a cousin who wants to be a principal, and let's make sure that, these things happen. And I'd rather not see that. I'd want those decisions to continue being best for kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree. I part of me doesn't mind having somebody run as a D. I mean, because the way Jim Lucas had framed it was, well, are they ashamed to be a Democrat? No, we ain't ashamed. We just understand what you're trying to do. And I know that there were some school board, and this is why I say this, there were some school board candidates who had the right look and the right feel. And then I found out later that they were totally against what I would stand for in a school board member. But you know what? It happens, right? You see where, especially when you follow the money. You follow the money, it'll tell you who's who. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's the only part. And like, you can just see where, they're trying to do everything they can to take over school boards because they control the money. Y'all, students be damned. So, so I imagine that education and preserving public education is probably one of your biggest topics as a teacher, or one of your biggest platforms as a teacher, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I've been telling people my kind of three platform ideas, then they kind of run off who I am. So as a union leader, I think it's really important we stand up for good jobs. I think
Absolutely.
it's so I think it's so important that people should be able to go to work and they should be able to come home from work and take care of themselves, take care of their family. They should have good benefits. They should be able to organize for better benefits when they want them. They should have dignified retirements. And those don't seem like outlandish things to say, right? I think people should be able to work hard and earn a good living. Um, Secondly, as somebody who's raising three children and working, I know how the difficult that can be sometimes navigating
Mm-hmm.
the whole raising a healthy family and also trying to work. I
Mm-hmm.
think the pandemic really has exacerbated a lot of those issues. Um, and we see how important paid leave, which you talked about earlier, will be for this country. We see how important parental paid leave will be when you're having a child.
And there's
If
nothing
you're
wrong with paternal paid leave either, by the way. I mean, it was a Floridian slip, but people wanted to get on former Mayor Pete Buttigieg for taking time off. Him and his husband just adopted kids. It seems to me like you would want the daddy to be there, but that's just
yeah,
me. That's just me. But go
you're
ahead.
trying to raise a healthy family, you
Yes.
need you need support at home to do that. You need to be able absolutely. Um, but that's important, and good affordable childcare is important, obviously. And then that continues to run up throughout the rest of your life. You need to be able to pay for prescription drugs. You need to be able to have higher education for a good cost. You need to have good
Yes.
schools. And that kind of leads into, as a high school teacher, I think we need the best schools in the world. I fully support public education. And I think there are a lot of issues, a lot of things that we can do to just fully fund schools that will help our communities move forward.
Absolutely. Let's go back to the labor topic because we're starting to see a lot of people in the summertime. Governor Holcomb decided he wanted to rescind the extra benefits 3 months early because he got pressure from businesses who were saying, "Oh my God, they're getting free money and they don't want to come back to work." And my thing was, they don't want to come back to your crappy job with crappy hours and crappy work conditions, but you just gonna try to force people to go back to work. And what we saw was, and we see the numbers. Yeah, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. People didn't go back to work, and we're seeing more and more labor strikes as of everywhere. Kellogg and John Deere and all these organized labor unions are saying, you know what, enough is enough. I think we're trying to recapture our labor power. I think we got caught up in, oh my God, all of our jobs are going overseas to Mexico. We're going to lose all of our jobs. Well, guess what? American labor is still productive, and they're still valuing us. And you know what? They're not shipping every job over there. Talk to me what you want to do to help protect individuals and groups of people who want to organize and who want to be a part of unions and come. It drives me crazy when Indiana is a right to work, but it's right to be broke. Is what it is. Right
Mm-hmm.
to work and be broke. But we don't want to talk about they collective bargain when they're you know trying to decide what the contract is going to be, right? When they get the lawyers in the room and we hash out a deal, that's bargaining, ain't it? That's
Mm-hmm.
my business and your business sitting down writing the contract, and we get to bargain. But why do we want to take that away from the regular people because we want to squash them? Talk about what you want to do to help protect folks who want to organize.
Yeah, I think so. I joined my union, and I was a part of an early leadership institute a couple years ago, and it was a really amazing experience for me because it was a bunch of teachers, and kind of the end goal was learning how to organize, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also this part of what can you do in your local association? What
Mm-hmm.
can you do in your district? And so the idea was you kind of work together and you come up with an idea to make something better in your district. And not to get into too many specifics there, but you see a problem, you talk to a lot of people, you organize,
Mm-hmm.
you find out where the issues are, and you say, hey, how can we make this better? How can we get boots on the ground that support this idea? And it was kind of a life-changing experience for me. It's
Okay.
actually kind of one of the reasons I think I'm running for Congress nowadays,
Okay.
is
Okay.
it taught me that if I want to see action, if I want to see improvement in my community, that I'm the one who can do it. We had this phrase that would often get thrown around. They'd say, well, you are the union. Instead of saying, oh, my union needs to stand up for me, this group, this thing out there, they need to stand up for me. It's, well, no, you are the union. You need to stand up for yourself.
Yep.
But that can't happen if we're taking rights away from people.
That's right.
That can't happen in these kind of right to work states where we're taking power away from people collectively bargaining and people coming together. And so, quite frankly, I mean, I'm just going to stand up for people in every chance I get. The PRO Act would be a really good way to start, to make sure that we have the right to organize. And I'll tell just another little story here. I don't like to talk about the person who's currently in office very much, Representative Hollingsworth. But sometimes I go out around the district and I say, well, I'm for people. You know, I want to make sure they can go home and have a good paycheck, good benefits. I'm for families. I want to make sure we have family leave policies, and I'm for schools. We should have the best schools. And that sounds hard to go against, right? Like, everybody's probably going to say those things.
Mm-hmm.
But he's voted against the PRO Act. He's voted against the right to organize. One of the first things he did in office was vote to get rid of the Affordable Care Act without replacing it with anything, just throwing millions.
Because that was a lie. It was a lie. They never had an idea. They just didn't want to. They just didn't want to help Americans out anymore. That's it.
Yeah, they didn't want to pay for it. And then schools. He's voted against the American Rescue Plan, which put millions of dollars into local communities. It's currently funding schools this year at a rate here in Indiana that we haven't seen for about 15 years. It's putting money directly back into police forces, firefighters. It's putting money into wastewater treatment plants right here in our district.
Yeah.
It's putting money into local communities that needed it because they were hurt from the pandemic. And so he's voted against that kind of stuff that is just, those are local issues. Those are people issues. One quote I kind of like is Tip O'Neill, I believe, former speaker, said, all politics are local.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't feel that way recently, does it?
No.
It just feels like we are getting more divided in these national issues, and everything that comes up is a national issue. When really we need to get back to talking about these local issues, and we need to elect people, and our representatives need to be people who are going to sit down and get out into their community, work together, organize, talk to others and listen, and then come up with ideas that are going to happen. And again, I stress this, that's kind of what happened to me in that union, that early leadership institute. Those are the ideas that I learned how to do. And I looked at our district and I said, I would like a change. I don't see my representative voting for us. I don't see my representative coming out here and listening to us. And I can be that change. Instead of I am the union, I am our government, right? Like,
right.
I am
we all right.
I'm part of it.
Right.
You're part of it. We're all part of it. And so we should step up and we can organize together.
Absolutely. So I couldn't agree with you more. That is like, that was one of the best things you said, because we think that running for office, you have to be Tennessee Trey, where his daddy gave him a whole bunch of money for him to move. He ain't never even really lived here, y'all. I mean, real talk. He ain't even really lived here. He came up here. He had a residence, right? A residence. And now he's in D.C. He ain't never lived here. He doesn't know us. He doesn't understand us. But he gets our votes because they don't actually come back and talk about what they've done, what they're doing, or what they plan to do. They just keep talking this rhetoric and scaring people. And it drives me nuts, because I know there are rural communities that are hurting right now, and they continually vote for this propaganda from people who want to destroy government instead of making it work for the people. Man, thank you for saying that, because that's deep. Indiana's own Dana Black, turn left. I am talking to congressional candidate from District 9, Matt Fyfe. If you like what he's talking about, you know me, I turn these into fundraisers. Click on his donate link on my page so that you can donate to his campaign if you like what he's saying to you, because the bottom line is we got to get him some help. Okay, so, all right, we ain't done. So what else you got? What else threw you out there? That one's powerful. I ain't gonna lie. That got me. So what else you got?
What else I got? So I think the number one thing I'd probably do when I'm elected, I'll use that when I'm elected, is sit on the Committee of Education and Labor. And I'd probably be on a subcommittee of K-12 education. These are just some guesses. And the Elementary and Secondary Education Act is up for reauthorization soon. It was originally back from the 60s. It became No Child Left Behind in 2002, and the Every Student Succeeds Act in 2015. Mm-hmm. And it's up for reauthorization pretty soon. And basically, that's the big bill that decides what we're doing at the federal level to help schools. And I think one of the biggest things I do is to help rewrite that bill. And number one, and this sounds a little funny, but the number one thing I do is to stop testing so much. And I focus on classroom experiences a lot more. And I think when I say that to teachers, you just hear like applause half the time. Because right now we test kids in third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and again in high school. And it just year after year. And the thing about that testing is what it does is it creates this stress level at every one of those grades and second grade to prepare for third grade. And you have these feelings like, oh, certain kids are behind. Oh, certain kids are far ahead. Oh, we need to focus on math. We need to focus on English. And I'm saying this as a math teacher.
Right.
I'm saying this as somebody who gets the extra funding. You know, we have the extra teachers in our department. We have the extra focus and funding coming our way. And the thing is, we're taking classes away from kids. We're taking extracurriculars away. We're saying, I've had to look kids in the eye and say, I'm sorry, you can't take that elective music class because you have to take this remedial test prep class. And at the end of the day, I mean, I love math. You're going to use it in life, whether you think so or not. And it's important to get a foundation for it. It's important to know what you're doing. But it's also important to follow your passions a little bit.
Absolutely. You know? That's what makes a person a full person, right? We're just not here to spit out data. You know, that's not who we are. We are fully functioning with aspirations and dreams and desires and goals that aren't necessarily related to reading, writing, and arithmetic. So I want to switch gears for just a second because you talked about some legislation that was coming out of Congress, and the infrastructure bill is still languishing and is still kind of hanging out there, just dangling out there. And at one point, our lieutenant governor, I think it was like in her second year of her first term here in Indiana, she made this proclamation and this commitment that we would take care of our infrastructure. More importantly, we would hone in on making sure that we had broadband, high-speed internet access in our rural communities. Now, this infrastructure bill addresses that. Mind you, they haven't done it yet. So I just want to be clear. After 6 years, they still ain't done what they said they was going to do. Okay. But this infrastructure bill actually addresses it. But these Republicans and most of they're not voting for it. Talk to me on your stance about infrastructure, not just high-speed internet, but infrastructure as a whole.
Yeah, we need it, right? That's a bill for people. That's a bill for all of us. You mentioned high-speed internet. I think 15% of Indiana or something like that doesn't have access to it. I think half of Indiana has one provider, so they're basically stuck with whatever price it is. We obviously need that infrastructure, and part of that's economic. Right. So we can't have entrepreneurs in Southern Indiana. We can't bring in, we've seen during the pandemic, you can kind of work from where you want to. We can't bring people in if we don't have the internet, though. It's beautiful down in Southern Indiana. I don't know how much you visited.
Are you kidding me? I've hit every stretch of highway in this state, or every stretch of major highway, I should say. I love Southern Indiana, especially in that Ohio area over in that side, Brown County over in the hills. It's really, really beautiful. Hey, western part of Southern Indiana, I'm over there too. Don't trip. But I love Southern Indiana because it's not as flat.
Yeah. And, if you think about it, and that's District 9 from kind of that brown over. And, you think how beautiful that is. It would be wonderful if people could live here and then work remotely. They could work for anywhere. If businesses wanted to come in here and plant. But that can't happen if we don't have the infrastructure, if we don't have the roads, the bridges, if we don't have the high-speed internet. And some of that's structural, right, like roads and bridges, but some of that is childcare. Some of that is making sure we have parental leave policies, that we have good, affordable, quality childcare. I think I read a stat recently that 20% or so of childcare places had to close in Indiana. I mean, that's a crazy stat. Yeah. And the thing is, we need to make sure that we're protecting our families at the same time that we're building roads and investing in our future.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because childcare is one of the main reasons why after Governor Holcomb decided he was going to take people's extra money away, that they needed to help in the middle of a pandemic, people said, I'm not going back to work. If I got to spend 2/3 of my paycheck on childcare, I might as well stay home and we tighten the belt up a little bit with just one paycheck because it doesn't make any sense to work for nothing. That's return on investment. They realized that the return on their investment for their labor, it wasn't worth it, so they're staying home. People like to talk about ROI and how much they invested until it comes down to the worker. But you make a valid point. Childcare is definitely one of those areas that we have got to address because and then the other thing about the high-speed internet is if we don't do what we're supposed to do in some of our less populated places, then all of the industries will come to the places like Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, our college towns, right? And some of those other people who want to stay out in rural areas and not as densely populated will not have the same advantages. We're creating, geographic disadvantages to people who don't want to live next door or who want to be 2 miles away from their next neighbor.
We are, and if the population goes down, then the school funding gets cut. If the school funding gets cut, then maybe there's more brain drain. And it's that vicious cycle, right? And if the school funding's cut, then maybe the schools have to consolidate. And instead of having an elementary school kind of in every neighborhood that you're used to, then it's one central location 45 minutes away. Hospitals aren't incentivized to build in these rural districts. I mean, it really is a snowball effect that if you can't get infrastructure into these places, then who's going to want to be there?
Who's going to want to be there? And you mentioned healthcare. Good segue.
Yeah.
So one of the other items that got nixed from discussions was, and I tell you what, Big Pharma, they some bad boys. I mean, you got to give it to them because they like, no, we going to charge Americans more than we charge anybody else in the world. Because they give everybody else discounts. They don't give Americans discounts, even though a lot of their production is here in the United States. But the ability to reduce the cost of medication also got nixed. Talk about healthcare and how you view healthcare, not just for Hoosiers, but as a nation as a whole.
Yeah, that's silly. I mean, you go out and talk to people you talk to people and they're like, yeah, I've been making sure that I cut my pills in half to make sure that I can afford these medication for the next 2 months. You talk to people and they say, well, I skipped that month, or I don't take that medication because it's too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I know this would be the best medication to take, but I take the one that's a little less expensive. It does all right for me. And that's just not prioritizing our health. We often talk about, and this is kind of a weird analogy maybe to make, but we often talk about like, I want the greatest economy in the world. And that's great. I love talking about having a great economy, but a lot of times the reason we say that is we want an economy, the greatest economy in the world, because that kind of equates to our lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
If the economy is great, then people are making a little bit more money. We're a little bit more generous. We got a few less people who are few less people who are having trouble feeding themselves, having
Mm-hmm.
trouble finding housing. Having a great economy really just says that we're making it. But we can do that in different ways.
Yes.
We can make sure that we can make it without just we can make sure that prescription drug costs are lower. We can make sure that our rural communities are taken care of. Our maternal and infant mortality rates are I guess they're high.
Abysmal. They are.
Abysmal, yeah. They're not great compared to other states, other nations in the world, if you compare Indiana to other nations. We can make sure that we're taking care of people. I think one more thing I'd like to do, and this is through an education lens, so this is interesting.
Okay, all right.
But create more community schools. There's this community school model, and a lot of people I'm going to describe this idea, and it's kind of what I've always thought schools should be. So why isn't this happening? But the community school model creates funding to make sure that the schools have the ability to connect with the community and the community needs. And so that could be community partners who are governmental, it could be private, it could be religious institutions. And it's creating better after school programs. It's creating better health incentives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you look at a community like in Brown County, where there's really not a lot of healthcare options after 4 o'clock. They got to drive over to Columbus or over to Bloomington or something. And so what you could do is you create this community school system. There is a school, right? Mm-hmm. There are schools in all of these communities already. And you say, hey, what's the best way that school can connect with what that community needs? Does that community need funding for drug addiction, stuff like that? Does that community need funding to make sure that families can get in here and get food?
Okay.
And so by giving that extra incentive to really focus on the community, on the local community, that school is kind of building up the community, not only just students and learning for the future, but they're building up the community because they're a place that the community can really come together and solve other issues as well.
And when you say community, you're talking post-secondary?
So the community school model is actually in K-12
Okay.
usually. And so that K-12, what it does is it kind of helps coordinate. It almost creates a coordinator to coordinate those issues from K-12 to the other governmental or other private institutions around the neighborhood.
Okay. I think I get it. I might. You might. You have to go into more detail.
As a teacher, I'm seeing that view right now where it's like, hey, give me a 1 if you don't understand it very well. Give me a 5 if you understand it a lot. And you're not raising up the 5 right now. That's what I'm seeing as a teacher. I'm like, oh, I missed that lesson.
Well,
all right. Hopefully, I get it better tomorrow.
Yeah. Because I think what I'm hearing is you're saying it's more than just giving them the the basic front end of educating the kids. The schools are actually in the community deciphering out what other needs there are, and then how we coordinate the efforts between the schools and the community to provide those extra wraparound things, right? Am I close?
Yeah. No, that was a nice 1-2 sentence summary. I like that.
See, I'm a keep it simple, stupid kind of girl. I mean,
I was gonna say, I was long-winded there, and you were just right to the point.
I wanted to make sure because if it's something, where else has this model been implemented, and what does the success look like?
Yeah, so it's a pretty successful program. It's been implemented in a couple places. It's been in a few candidates' plans as well, and that's where I kind of heard about the model and figured out it was such a good thing. And one thing the model does, I'm going to add to kind of your definition here. So one thing we see as teachers is we deal with trauma a lot. I think that's kind of a word that we've been learning lately and using with students. So students come into the classroom, and obviously we want to teach them math. We want to teach them music. We want to teach them other stuff. But when they come in with trauma, and trauma can look differently. It could come in like, hey, I haven't eaten breakfast, or I don't know where my next meal is going to be.
Right.
It could be something simple like, I saw my parents get in a fight. But it could be bigger stuff, like somebody in my family went to the hospital recently. We lost a job in the family. I don't know where I'm sleeping tonight. It could be those big things, and sometimes it's multiple layers of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so these students come in with the trauma, and it's hard to teach when the students have trauma, right?
Yeah.
You kind of got to deal with the more important stuff first, and then the teaching and the passions come second. But if that kid's worried about something else, it's really hard to get them focused on math or music or other things. And so I think what the community school model does well is it helps focus that trauma in a good way. We've been, for years now, 15, 20 years, we've been trying to put a lot on schools, and for decent reasons. We say, hey, kids are struggling. Kids are, we have 150 unhoused students in this district.
Mm-hmm.
We have students whose families are addicted to drugs, and we can see that. But the school is kind of the common denominator a lot of times, because they're the ones who see the kids. They're the ones who connect with the families. And so how do you help some of these issues? It's get the issues, get the thing that can help, the tool to help, get it in the place where we are connecting with these families, with these schools. And so that trauma that the student is going through, I think by creating a community school program, it really gets the tools into the school to help those families out. And it's not only just helping the students or families that have students, but once you have those services in the community, it's creating that better communication throughout the community. It's creating better services for all. And so it's really funding schools in the way that we want. We want schools. We've been saying as a nation, as lawmakers, we've been saying schools should be taking care of these things. Let's fund it so that we can take care of these things, because then our students are going to get a good education. They're going to go out into the world. They're going to do better things, and it'll be better overall.
So it's one of the other topics that is right up there with everything else. And in order for us to really slow it down and have an impact on changing, fixing, resolving, climate change is a collective effort. We still have not seen, the Green New Deal, they somehow or another, they turned green into a bad word. They took New Deal, which historically has been an amazing thing, and turned it into a bad word. Here in Indiana, there's a person who's running, I think, in House District 46 or Senate District 46. I can't think of his name right now. He says he wants to hold on to all the coal jobs. Seems like when you know better, you should do better. Talk to me about your vision on climate change and how we address it.
Yeah, at this point, there's no reason why we shouldn't be acting on it, right? I mean, this isn't even a hard issue.
Right?
All the scientists agree, like, hey, this is a global threat to humanity. Um, at this point, energy prices, when you look at solar, when you look at other things, it's about as cheap as anything else, coal, gas. There's no reason why we shouldn't be transitioning. There's no reason why we shouldn't be incentivizing green. Additionally, here in Indiana, we're known for farming. We want to have good soil. We want to have good air. We want to have clean water. That's just not something that should be.
It shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be that difficult, right?
That shouldn't be divisive, right? These seem like such kind of straightforward logic. But again, it's kind of like you said, green becomes scary. This New Deal, which again was like one of the greatest times. We look back and people are like, that's one of the greatest times for American people ever.
Well, certain American people. Let's be clear.
That's true for certain American people.
The melanated ones, not so much.
But you look back at that and they become scary words, and I'm not sure why. Is it the money in politics? Is it the reason that candidates can kind of are incentivized to have millions of dollars, like you said earlier, when they run for office? As somebody who's just in their community, as somebody who's just a teacher, right? I'm just a high school teacher. My success depends on my neighbor's success.
Yeah.
It's about as simple as that, right?
Yeah.
I don't make millions of dollars. I have a mortgage. I apply for jobs. I've done that in my life. I don't get them handed to me. I don't get kind of money handed to me. I've worked hard for this stuff, and I've watched the people around me do the same thing. My neighbors work hard for their jobs. They have mortgages. They have kids. They're just trying to live their life. They need representatives who understand that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And we were talking about good soil. You mentioned good soil. There's another pipeline that's coming through Native American Indigenous people's land. It's pipeline number 3 from the same company who got the other pipeline shut down. And they're debating it still in Minnesota. And as they're debating, we've got new technology for these, pipelines and, blah, 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 blah. There's a leak happening in the Pacific Ocean, right? So stop. And mind you, there's not even a huge market for these tar sands that they shoveling down people's throats. But money, it's all about how much I can siphon out. And we have done a really poor job, I think, explaining how new technology and new energy sources are going to be as beneficial to the everyday working person as sending somebody down in a coal mine. I get that there are people that have coal jobs, but let's phase them out. Enough is enough. Even the big coal people are like, yeah, we're going to shut this plant down. A couple of years ago, the state GOP passed legislation that made coal companies get permission to shut down their coal plants because they're like, yeah, this is not efficient for us anymore. We want to go to new energy. So, it bugs me. I think Governor Ron DeSantis is going to be standing down in Miami on a platform because the rest of the streets will be underwater. And he's going to be like, no, coal, fossil fuels, as he's standing in Miami Beach is gone. You're hanging out on Collins, 17th and Collins, and it's not there anymore, that's just how nutty these people are. All right, our hour is almost up. Can you believe it? I told you it's going to go by fast.
It went quick. Time flies when you're having fun, I think.
That's what's up. So tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, all right. So I have a website, mattfyfe.com. That's mattfyfe.com. That's a good place where you can go to the Join Me tab and you can sign up to volunteer. If a campaign like this is going to work, I'm gonna have to connect with a lot of people. I would love to connect with teachers. I'll put it that way. I think there's a large teacher network in every community, in every county in this district. And I hope to be able to talk to teachers in a strong way that makes them talk to their families. One thing, again, that I've learned from my union is that if you're gonna stand up and organize, the best way to do it is relationally. Yep. You talk to somebody they talk to somebody they know, they talk to somebody they know. So you can find me there. You can join me if you want to help this campaign out. If you want to help volunteer, we're getting that opportunities off the ground. You can also donate there. I think Dana, you mentioned this earlier.
I did. There's a link. If you like what he's talking about, click the link.
Good way to help, especially high school teacher, not made of millions of dollars. It'd be nice to have a little help contributing. You could do 5 for Fyfe, right? That's cute.
That's
or
cute.
9
Yeah.
for the 9 for the 9th.
Yeah. Or 59.
You can max out for Matt.
That's creative. Max out for Matt. I like that.
So anyway, you can contribute there. You can also find me on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. Those are all Hoosiers for the number and then Fyfe.
I love it. I love it. And do you have any fundraisers or any events coming up that people can attend?
Yeah, we got a few things coming up. We're trying to so I'm located in Bloomington. I think I mentioned that. My wife works at IU, and I teach in a school here in Bloomington. We're actually trying to get outside the Bloomington a little bit.
Got to.
And I think we're trying to do some kickoff events, some meet and greets, as many as we can outside Bloomington. So there's definitely a couple coming up outside Bloomington, like Harrison County, down near Floyd, Scott County. I think Switzerland as soon as we can. We're kind of finalizing a few things, maybe over in Brown and Lawrence.
Okay.
Now, that's not to say if you're near Bloomington or you're near Monroe County, there'll be plenty of opportunities here too. But I'm just saying, around this district, there are ways that you can get connected and do some meet and greets. I would love to do that.
And I would encourage that. I would encourage you to get out of Bloomington because being in that bubble, that blue bubble, will give you a real false sense of security. And if you don't get out of that bubble and go talk to those folks in Decatur and Jennings and Washington County, Switzerland County, Ripley County, all those counties in the 9th District, if you don't get there, you do so at your peril. You know what I'm saying? So be sure that you host an event. That's my one piece of advice. Make sure that you host events in all those locations more than once. Sometimes it just can be a simple meet and greet, but definitely get to all those locations, coordinate with all those county chairs, and be ready to answer some hard questions. I think you'll be all right. You're a teacher. You can do it. I have faith. You can do it.
I got to say, you mentioned Jennings. I was in Jennings County the other day at a dinner, and they had a full table of young Democrats. It was, again, one of the most inspiring things to see.
And see, the young Dems are just, they are so on point. Like,
they are.
You need to follow them. If you're not following, you don't have to be a young. I get inspired by all of them all of the time. They're just doing such amazing things around the state, and I am inspired by these young people. They keep me going. They, when I get cynical and I want to look at people crazy, they bring me back. Yep. Young Dems are the truth. So yeah.
But no, I gotta say, I think this idea of organizing so that in 10 years, there's not a supermajority anymore.
Yeah.
We got to start getting out in every county. We got to start organizing in every county. We got to start talking to people everywhere. It's important to bring back some independence. It's important to bring up some young Dems. It's important to bring everybody back and show that this stuff matters.
Absolutely.
Who represents us matters, and who are making our laws matter. And to stop with the boogeyman talk and to get right down to it.
Absolutely.
And so if you want to help me do that, go to that mattfyfe.com. You can sign up. Let's do a meet and greet. You can contribite there. I'd love to continue the conversation more.
I love it. And when you get to Dearborn, tell my girls I said, "What's up?" They gonna know who I am. They gonna know. All right, I love Dearborn. All right, Indiana's own Dana Black. That has been Matt Fyfe. I really do appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. This was a great conversation. This is what we're going to be bringing. We're going to be bringing you the candidates who are wanting to run and represent you at all levels of government over the next, 3 years. Because this was the non-election year. This was the summer to kind of let your head down and hang out. But in the next 3 years, we got midterms. Then we'll have municipal races. And then we'll have another presidential race. And so now, I hope you enjoyed your summer. I hope you got some rest in. Because the work begins again. I never stopped working. I know y'all know that. The work is done. Hey, if you missed it, Stonewall hosted an event this week. Wow, it was so cool to hang out with the Rainbow Warriors. It was a beautiful thing. We're getting hyped up. We're celebrating our history makers. But more importantly, we're going to be working to elect more LGBTQ plus candidates and our allies. Okay. Next week, Next week on Turn Left, I will have the chair and vice chair of our state Democratic Party, Mike Shmuel, and the Honorable Mila Eldridge. So y'all make sure y'all mark your calendars. Tune in next Thursday. We will be live, baby. We will be live. We're going to talk to the chair and vice chair about their mission, their vision, and their plan on how we can be as successful as we possibly can in 2022 and beyond. All right? Get hyped. Get ready. It's time. Time to get busy, because ain't nobody going to do it for us. We got to get busy, all right? I'll holler at y'all next week.